Okay, so if you pull up a political map of South America, let's say from around 1830, you see something that just doesn't make sense at first.
Not at all.
On the one side, the Spanish side,
Yeah.
you've got, well, fragmentation, total chaos. Gran Colombia is shattering into pieces. You've got warlords everywhere. It's a complete mess.
It's a broken mirror. I mean, the dream of a unified Spanish America that Bolivar had, it was pretty much dead on arrival.
But then you look east to the Portuguese side, and there's just this one massive single territory, Brazil. It's huge, it's united, and, relatively stable.
And that's the great anomaly, isn't it? While everyone else was trying and mostly failing with republicanism, Brazil did something totally different. It became an empire.
Yeah, and that's the part that always gets me. Not for a few years. We're talking a full-blown European-style monarchy right there in the tropics for almost 70 years.
With crowns, courts, the whole thing. It was this complete paradox, a monarchy that was reading Adam Smith and pushing liberal economics, but running on the most archaic institution imaginable, slavery.
And that's really our mission for this deep dive. We're looking at our source, Chronicles of the South of Rio Grande, to figure out how this incredible historical accident happened, how it held Brazil together.
And crucially, how the very things that made it so successful, like its powerful military and its coffee economy, were the exact things that eventually, led to its downfall.
It all starts with a huge unintended consequence.
It starts with Napoleon.
Right. It's 1807. Napoleon's on the march. He invades Portugal. And the Portuguese Prince Regent, Juan VI, is completely stuck. Napoleon's coming for him, and the British Navy is sitting in Lisbon's harbor.
Basically saying, pick a side. Now, usually a monarch has two options there. You fight and probably get crushed by Napoleon, or you surrender and become a puppet.
But the Braganzas, the Portuguese royal family, they chose option C.
They ran.
They ran. But this is the amazing part. They didn't just flee. They packed up the entire state.
The whole thing. It's not just a few bags of gold. I mean, it was a logistical nightmare. You had the Queen, Maria I, who was mentally unwell at the time. The Prince Regent, all the ministers, the judges, the military command, the national treasury, the archives.
They even packed the royal library. 60,000 books. The estimates are something like 10 to 15,000 people get on these ships with a British escort.
Can you just imagine that scene? It's pouring rain. The Queen is screaming because she thinks she's being taken to the guillotine. But it was a stroke of genius.
Because in one move, the colony became the center of the empire. The metropolis moved to the colony.
Which just flips the entire colonial relationship on its head. For 300 years, Brazil could only trade with Portugal. It was a closed system.
But you can't rule a global empire from a backwater colony. So one of the first things Juan does is issue the decree, opening of the ports to friendly nations.
Which is basically code for, we can trade with Great Britain now.
Exactly. Suddenly Brazil is flooded with British goods. I read they were even importing ice skates to Rio de Janeiro.
Hilarious. But it was more than that. He creates the Bank of Brazil, which is still around. He sets up a royal printing press.
Which was illegal before. You weren't allowed to print books or newspapers in Brazil. Now you have professional schools, a medical school. He's building a state.
And the capstone is in 1815. He elevates Brazil from a colony to a kingdom equal in status to Portugal.
The colony basically ate the mother country. And I'm sure that went over really well back in Europe once Napoleon was gone.
Oh, terribly. By 1820, there's a liberal revolution in Portugal. And the liberals there wanted a constitution for Portugal, but for Brazil, they wanted to turn it back into a colony.
So they demand King Juan VI return to Lisbon.
And this is where the family drama really kicks in. Juan knows he has to go back, but he also knows if he leaves Brazil, it'll shatter.
So he leaves his son, Pedro, in charge as regent.
And he gives him this legendary piece of advice. He says, son, Brazil is going to go its own way eventually. When it does, make sure you're the one leading it. Put the crown on your own head before some adventurer grabs it.
A not-so-subtle dig at guys like Simón Bolívar.
Absolutely. So Juan goes back, and the Portuguese parliament, the Cortes, just immediately overplays its hand. They start trying to strip Brazil of its autonomy.
They order Pedro to come home to finish his education. They're treating him like a kid.
Which leads to the big moment, January 9th, 1822, the Dia do Fico, the day of stay.
Right. The people of Rio petition him not to leave, and he comes out on the balcony and says, tell the people that I will stay.
That was it. The point of no return. 9 months later, September 7th, he's by the Ipiranga River. He rips the Portuguese colors off his uniform and shouts,
independence or death. It's this incredibly dramatic scene. But the key is what happened next.
Yeah.
Or rather, what didn't happen.
Exactly. No massive bloody civil war like in Spanish America. Because the heir to the throne was leading the independence movement, the entire government just switched allegiances.
The bureaucracy, the army, the courts, they all just pledged loyalty to Emperor Pedro I instead of King Juan VI. There was no power vacuum.
That continuity is everything. It preserved the social order, which of course included slavery.
But they did draft a constitution in 1824. And this thing it's a fascinating document. It's not your standard 3 branches of government.
No, and this is the really clever part, depending on your perspective. They added a 4th branch, the moderating power.
The Poder Moderador.
Right. And you can think of it as a kind of imperial override, a break glass in case of emergency button that only the emperor could push.
So if Parliament was deadlocked or things were getting out of hand,
He could step in, he could dissolve the Chamber of Deputies, he could appoint senators for life, he could fire judges. He was the ultimate referee, the balance wheel of the system.
it's basically a constitutional dictatorship, isn't it?
Critics certainly called it that. But it did provide stability. It didn't save Pedro I from himself. His reign was pretty rocky.
Yeah, he was seen as too authoritarian, still too connected to Portugal.
Yeah.
And he got sucked into the Cisplatin War.
A total disaster. Brazil and Argentina were fighting over what is now Uruguay, and it just became a bloody, expensive stalemate.
And it was blocking trade in the area.
Which annoyed the real power in the Atlantic at the time.
For the British.
The British. So Britain steps in and basically imposes a peace. They say, neither of you gets it. This territory will be an independent buffer state. And that's how the nation of Uruguay was created.
A huge humiliation for Pedro the Royal. He lost a province. That, plus his personal scandals, tanked his popularity. He ends up abdicating in 1831.
And he leaves his son behind to rule.
His son, who was 5 years old.
Can you even imagine? Your father just leaves in the middle of the night, you never see him again, and you are now the emperor of this massive country.
It really shaped Pedro II's personality. He wasn't a warrior. He was a scholar and intellectual. He said he would have rather been a teacher.
But Brazil couldn't wait. The period while he was a child, the regency was pure chaos. Revolts everywhere. The country was starting to come apart.
So in 1840, when he's just 14, the politicians stage what they call the coup of the majority. They just declare him an adult.
And with that, the second reign begins. This is what's called the golden age of the empire. And the engine of that golden age was one crop.
Coffee.
Coffee was everything. The world was addicted to it. And by 1850, Brazil was producing half of it. It paid for everything. Railroads, telegraphs, gas lights in Rio.
And it creates a new, powerful elite. The coffee barons. They were the monarchy's biggest supporters because the emperor guaranteed 2 things: stability for their business and elation.
The legality of their property.
Yeah.
And their main property was, of course, other human beings.
It's the central contradiction of the whole era. Pedro II was personally an abolitionist. He corresponded with Victor Hugo, but he was presiding over the largest slave society in the Americas.
And just to show you how committed the elite were to slavery, there's that bizarre little side story in the source material about the Confederates.
Oh, the Confederados. After the U.S. Civil War, thousands of Southerners from the defeated Confederacy packed up and moved to Brazil because it was the last place in the Americas where they could legally own slaves.
They founded a city called Americana, which is still there. Their descendants still have festivals celebrating their Confederate heritage. It's wild.
But the world was moving on.
Yeah.
And the event that really started the clock ticking on the empire was a war.
The Paraguayan War, or the War of the Triple Alliance. Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay against Paraguay. It was unbelievably brutal.
The bloodiest war in modern South American history, Paraguay was. I mean, it was annihilated. Some estimates say they lost up to 70% of their adult male population.
Brazil won, but it was a catastrophic victory. The country was deep in debt to British banks. But the most important change was what happened to the military.
This is the real turning point. The army swelled in size, and many of the new soldiers, the volunteers of the fatherland, were slaves who were promised freedom in exchange for fighting.
So you have these men, these black soldiers, fighting and dying for Brazil. They come home as heroes, as free men, to a country that still enslaves their families. It's an impossible situation.
And their white officers are coming home changed too. They've been fighting alongside Republicans from Argentina and Uruguay. They start getting new ideas.
Yeah, they get exposed to positivism, this philosophy of order and progress. They start seeing the monarchy as old-fashioned, inefficient, an obstacle.
So now all the pieces are in place for the collapse. The source material argues the empire stood on three pillars.
Right. The church, the military, and the slave-owning aristocracy. And in the last 15, 20 years of the empire, Pedro II manages to lose all three.
Okay, we've got the military. They're politicized and unhappy. What about the church?
Well, Pedro was a Catholic, but he was also a Freemason. The Pope in Rome issued an order forbidding Catholics from being Masons. When Brazilian bishops tried to enforce it, Pedro had them arrested.
He arrested bishops.
He did, and just like that, the church, which had always backed the throne, went silent. They withdrew their support. So that's pillar number 2 gone.
Which leaves the big one, the landowners, the coffee barons. As long as he protects slavery, they're with him.
But the pressure was becoming immense, both internationally from Britain and domestically. They passed gradual laws, the free womb law, another freeing slaves over 60.
But in 1888, Pedro is in Europe for health reasons. His daughter, Princess Isabel, is acting as regent, and she's a passionate abolitionist.
And on May 13th, 1888, she signs the Lei Aurea, the Golden Law. 2 sentences. Slavery in Brazil is declared extinct.
And crucially, with no compensation for the slave owners.
That was the fatal blow. Overnight, the monarchy's staunchest supporters became its bitterest enemies. They became Republicans out of pure revenge.
The stool has lost all 3 legs.
And the end is almost an anticlimax. November 15th, 1889. A marshal, an old friend of the emperor, Diodoro da Fonseca, just marches his troops into the city square and proclaims a republic.
No popular uprising, no storming of the palace.
Nothing. And Pedro II, old and sick, just accepted it. He basically said, I am tired, I will go. He and his family were put on a ship to exile in Europe.
A quiet, heartbreaking end.
But the legacy is still there. I mean, it's literally on the Brazilian flag today.
Right. Most people think the green and yellow stand for the forests and the gold.
That's the story they made up later. The green was the dynastic color of the House of Braganza, Pedro's family. The yellow was the color of the House of Habsburg, his wife's family.
So the modern republic is flying the royal colors of his former emperors.
Exactly. They just took out the imperial crest in the middle and put in that blue circle with the stars. And that circle isn't random.
No, it's the night sky.
It's a star chart of the sky over Rio de Janeiro on the morning of November 15th, 1889. The exact moment the republic was declared. The moment the empire died.
Wow. So the flag is literally a monument to the emperor's fall, wrapped in the colors of his own family.
It's the perfect summary. The empire was this strange, contradictory thing that held the country together. It built the foundation of the modern state, but it couldn't survive its own internal contradictions.
It built the road to the 20th century, but wasn't allowed to walk on it.
And that leaves you with a real final thought. The military officers who led the coup put the motto, order and progress, on that new flag. But in a deep irony, the empire was the order. What followed was decades of instability and military coups.
So did they overthrow a monarchy for progress or just to put a different elite in charge?
That is the question, isn't it? What if things had gone differently? Could a constitutional monarchy have survived in the Americas? A fascinating what if.
A great place to leave it. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
My pleasure.
We'll see you in the next one.